And I suppose they decided, well, she can't be so scary after all. David is sitting there calmly. In fact, because he had by that time stolen bananas from my camp, he sometimes wandered up to me to see whether perhaps I had a banana anywhere. So David Greybeard, in a way, introduced me to his friends in the forest. Of course, I don't mean that literally, but because of him, I got to know his close friend Goliath, who I discovered was the top-ranking male, and gradually began to understand the importance of dominance in adult males, the hierarchy. Some males really work extremely hard and risk all kinds of physical punishment to climb that social ladder. Other males just aren't so interested in that. Some males start climbing the social ladder, get a really bad setback, they're attacked perhaps by a high-ranking male and give up. Others, the same thing happens, but they don't give up. Their wounds cure and they go back and go on trying to climb that social ladder. And what's interesting is that there are males who get to the top by sheer aggression, just bullying and fighting a lot. And they don't usually last very long, maybe 2 years, 3 years. Some get to the top by using their intelligence, having these charging displays which the dominant males use to enhance their status, charging across the ground, hair bristling, lips punched in a furious scowl, stamping, slapping, swaying the vegetation, throwing rocks. And those that have the most imaginative and frequently performed displays tend to get to a higher position. Some of the males who've used their intelligence have lasted for up to 10 years. That was the longest reign of any male at Gombe. And through David Greybeard and his calmness, I got to know the other males, not only Goliath, but old Mr. McGregor and Mr. Wurzel, and some of those other names that some of you know from reading In the Shadow of Man and some of the other books. And I got to know the old female Flo and timid Ollie and Melissa and Passion, and finding every single individual had his or her own very distinct personality. And as time went on, and I'm now looking back from further on, looking back and thinking over the years, we have learned so much about how chimpanzees resemble us in so many ways. Today, we know how like us they are biologically. We didn't know back then in 1960 that we share just over 98% of our DNA with chimpanzees. We didn't know the extent to which the composition of the blood, the immune system, the anatomy of the brain was so like ours. I was most fascinated, of course, by the similarities in behavior, the complex social structure, the politics, really, that go on between the individual males to get to the top. It's highly political. And I came to realize that in chimp society, as human society, there are good mothers and bad mothers. And the good mothers are protective, but not overprotective. They're tolerant, but they can impose discipline. They're affectionate, they're playful. Above all, they're supportive. And they will run to the help of their child, even though that may get them into trouble. And we now know that the offspring of those females tend to do better in later life. And the offspring of the mothers who are less good tend not to do so well. And it emphasizes the growing understanding among human child psychologists and child psychiatrists of the tremendous importance of early experience in our own society. Chimpanzees have a long childhood. It's 5 years between live births for the most part, sometimes a bit shorter, sometimes a bit longer. And during those 5 years of dependency, the child is sleeping with the mother at night, riding on her back, although less frequently, suckling, although towards the end it's more for reassurance than nourishment. And it's pretty clear that this long childhood is important for them as well as us in relation to social learning. And young chimpanzees learn by observing the behavior around them, by imitating and practicing. One definition of human culture is behavior that's passed from one generation to the next through observational learning. And so now that we know that where chimpanzees are being studied in different parts of Africa, and we know that they have completely different tool-using behaviors and some other behaviors as well, we can actually say that chimpanzees have their own primitive cultures. It was a bit of a shock to me to find that chimpanzees, like us, have a dark side to their nature, that they are, in certain situations, capable of violence, brutality, and even a kind of warfare. It's more like gang warfare between males of neighboring communities. They live in communities of around 30 to 50 individuals. And these attacks on neighboring individuals can lead to wounding so severe that the individual will die from those wounds inflicted. But just like us, chimpanzees also have a more gentle, compassionate side to their nature. Their communication gestures include many that we use: kissing, embracing, holding hands, patting, begging, and used in the same kind of context. Chimpanzees are capable of compassion and true altruism. And I'll tell a couple of stories here. First of all, let's imagine we're following a young male. His name is Satan, for reasons that aren't important. He's not a satanic individual. And by this time, he's 23 years old. He's in his prime, very magnificent. He's going along the valley by himself, as males often do, and he hears sounds of excited chimpanzees. They've obviously found good food, and his hair bristles with excitement. He hurries along the trail. He comes to this big tree filled with feeding chimps and ripe figs. He climbs up, he sees a bunch of ripe red fruit. He goes straight there. There's a younger male, about 2 years younger than Satan, feeding, but he's subordinate to Satan, so Satan threatens him and he backs off screaming. Well, what Satan didn't know as he begins to feast on this luscious fruit is that young male's older brother is higher up in the tree. And hearing his kid brother in trouble, he comes swinging down, and the two brothers now attack Satan together, and Satan screams. To my amazement, a very ancient female who's been feeding quietly up in the canopy. She's shriveled with age. Her teeth are worn to the gums. Her hair is sparse and brown rather than glossy black. She's at least 50. She could be more. And she drops her frail little self onto these three battling males. And with her little hand starts hitting the two brothers. And I think they were so surprised that they mildly threatened her, and Satan got away. And that was his ancient mother, Sprout. It's an example of the close, affectionate, supportive relationships that can last through life. And we have instances of true altruism, where a male who is not related to an infant may adopt that infant if his or her mother dies and save their lives. So it's pretty clear that there isn't, as once was supposed, a sharp line dividing us from the rest of the animal kingdom.